What's up guys, Richard here, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to do a water shader. Now this is just a simple water shader, it's not the best in the world, there's a lot of ways to do water shaders. But this was one I quickly put together to see if Flax could do the types of things I wanted it to do. And I figured I'd show you guys how I did this. So as you can see on my screen right now, this is the water shader. It's applied to just a simple plane, which is over this terrain here. Now the terrain's just got a flat texture on it. It hasn't got any normal maps or anything like that. We're only really focused on the water at the moment. I also kind of built this stylized one, which, I don't know, maybe you'd like it, but we're just going to focus on this one right here. Okay, so building a material in Flax. So what you want to do is go new, then material. Now here you've got material, material function, material instance. We'll deal with material instances later. We're only going to deal with the material right this second. So what we're going to do is going to create our own material and call it my water mat. Okay, cool. And the very first thing we're going to do is apply it to that. Now, when you guys create your plane, one thing to note about the plane is you want to go to the right-hand side, scroll down to the bottom under entries, you'll see my water material, which we just applied, and you're going to want to turn off shadows. Otherwise, that water is going to project one solid shadow onto the terrain, and it just looks bad. Okay, so I've just opened up our material settings, and on the right-hand side over here is going to be where we do all our material work. So I'm just going to change this to a plane because that's going to be more realistic for what we're dealing with. And here we go. So there, just put the plane into position. Great. Now, a water is transparent. So on the general settings over here, you're going to change opaque to transparent. And then everything else should be fine for now. So the first thing we want to do is give our water some type of color, I guess. So what you could do is just go straight up, type color here, select that and say, look, this is going to be that color for water, and then go put it in and boom, we've got our water. And if I minimize this or move it over to the side and then press save, you'll see it's applied there, a flat color, nothing fancy. Now, the way water usually works is the further away it is, kind of the darker it appears, and the closer it is, the lighter it appears. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix two colors together, but we want to be able to change these in real time later on during the game. So I'm going to scroll down the right here, and I'm going to create two parameters, two color parameters. The first one, I'm going to just call base color. And then the second one, again a color, we're going to call this far color. Now, for the base color, I'm just going to have a nice like light blue, and for the far color, I'll have like a darker blue, maybe, yeah, probably just a darker blue. You could go like a greenish color depending on what you're after. Now, we're going to delete this color node here because that's of no use to us anymore. And we're going to drag in our base color and our far color. So we've got our two colors together. Now, what we want to do is mix these colors. So there's a node that's called a lerp. And that's a linear interpolate. And what that does is it mixes between two nodes based on a third one, a value between 0 and 1. So if I go the color into A, the base color, and then the far color into B, and then I drag this into the color, you'll see there's a mix rate of 0.5. And if I save that, all it's going to do is mix these two colors, basically 50-50, which is just a blue. So what we want to actually do is have these mix based on how far away they are from the camera. So there's a node for this. We're going to type camera depth. There it is. Camera depth fade. Now drag this result into the alpha, and this will say basically for each one of these little pixels along the water shader, depending on how far they are away, choose one of these two colors, a certain amount of each one. Now, for the fade length, this is basically like how far away it should like do the fading. So I found a good value of about 300 should work here. So if I save this, you're not going to notice it here. But if we go into here, you might notice at the back there, it's a little bit darker. You could probably test that by like just making the far color red, and you'll notice that. So that's our simple color settings. Now, the next thing we want to make is actually some waves on the water. The main thing with water is it's got like the ripple effects going up and down. And the way you do that is you use normal maps. Normal maps create artificial bumps where there really isn't bumps, and it just plays with the lighting. So we're going to need a normal map. Now, the way to get a water normal map is, if you're just for testing purposes, is just go straight to Google, type water normal map, and there's like hundreds of them that pop up. In fact, maybe I can bring up one right now. Okay, so if you look here on my screen, you can see that there's a bunch of different water normal maps that I've brought up, and you can just download whatever one you like. I eventually found one that was this one just here. So we're going to drag this in, and then what would happen if we just slap this straight into the normal field and go save? Oh, well, that looks good. It looks like it's bumpy, it's got waves, but here it's not doing anything, it's not moving. So if we want to give it a bit of a moving effect, we're going to use something that's called a Panda. And a Panda basically just constantly offsets the UVs, which are the coordinates of the texture, by a certain amount. So we're going to go Panda, and we're going to grab the output of the Panda and slap it straight into there. And if I save it, you'll notice on the right hand side it's now going on like a moving angle, but it's going way too fast. So obviously we need to play with the speed, and the speed is actually a vector 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go vector 2, and this means like how fast is it moving on the X, how fast is it moving on the Y. Now I'm going to play around with these and probably go with like 0.00 maybe 4 and 0.009, because I don't want it to be like in a specific direction. If we have a look at this, it seems to be moving at a nice speed now, but the waves are just constantly coming at us. They're like, there's no, like, waves are normally like bang, bang, you know, they're all like crashing into each other and stuff like that, at least on like the open water. So the way we want to do this is actually have a second normal map. We want to have two normal maps, each moving in a different direction. Then we want to collapse them onto each other to create this like intersection of different normals that will create like the ripples coming up and down and look kind of randomized. So that means obviously we're going to need a second normal map with a second Panda. Now you could use a different normal texture. For now I'm just going to use the same one. Now the obvious thing to do here would be, let's just reverse the speed of the two Pandas, but we don't want it to be exactly the same, because if it's exactly the same then you're going to notice that. So let's make this, actually let's make it 8 on the bottom and we'll make it 3 on the top. Okay, so now we need a way of basically collapsing these two normal maps into one. Now, most people are just going to go, oh, I'll just multiply them together, but normal maps operate differently to, say, just colors and stuff. The colors obviously represent heights. Now, there's lots of different ways of collapsing normal maps, but one of the ways that I found was basically to use a append, add, multiply, and then a derived system. So we're going to put that into place now. I'm just going to push these over to the left, and we're going to grab an append and come here. So I'm going to need 2 of these, one for each one. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the X and the Y coordinate of each one. Now, specifically, mathematically, what this is doing, I can't really explain it to you, but what it's basically doing is creating a way of calculating a new Z height for the normal map based on the X and Y coordinates of the normal at that position. You just follow basically this little pattern. You just append those, then you add them together, then you multiply them by a certain amount. And the multiply could be any amount, but this basically is like how strong you want the normal to become. So I'm just going to say like double strength at the moment. And then what you do is you derive the normal, the Z, which is the height of the normal, from this created normal map that you've made just here. So we're then going to slap this into the normal, and what you should get now is there. We've got these two normals overlapping with each other. So just remember this whole part here. Now, if I want to comment this, I just right click and type comment, well, not text coordinate. I want comment. And okay, that did not work as planned. Let's just undo that. And okay, let's select these nodes, then right click, then go comment. And I'm just going to call this combine normal maps. Combine normal maps. Just so that we can kind of track that, what's happening there. So we're combining two separate normal maps, and then we're moving them together. Okay, now the thing is, these two normal maps are exactly the same size of each other, which probably isn't a issue here, but we would like to make them slightly different sizes, just to add like some more randomness to it. And we'd also like to be able to specify how like compressed these waves actually become. So if you have a look over here on the Panda, it takes in a UV coordinate. Now what we can do is we can create our own tiling, basically specify the amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a text coordinate for each one, text coordinate, and also one down here. I'll just move this over. So this is the actual texture coordinates, and then we're going to multiply this by our own tiling value. So I'm going to create a new parameter. I'm going to call this, actually I'm going to make this a vector2, and we're going to call this tiling. So grab this into here and slap that straight into there. You know what, we can have this one as tiling 1, and then we can make another one if we really want and call this tiling 2. And this will add even a little bit more randomness into the equation. So that means both of these normals are going to tile at different amounts. So let's just put that into there and move this one down here and put this up into here. So now to see how the tiling works, first I'm just going to put this into here and then this into here. So if we save this, currently there is no tiling because we just set the tiling to 0. But if we go 1, 1, 1, 1, this is what it would have been before. It all would have been tiling at just 1 before. So now we can play with this a little bit. We could go, we want a tiling for this one of 3 here and maybe like 2.9 here. You probably wouldn't want to make these values like too divergent from each other because otherwise you'll notice the stretching of it. And for this one here, I'm going to go like 0.5 and maybe, I don't know, 0.6. And let's have a look to see how that looks. Okay, so you can see what you're doing here. Now, for me, I would probably just have a general float just to keep these things square. So I'll leave this here for now, but I'm just going to make this maybe 5, 5, 6, and 6. And let's have a look how that looks. Okay, so that looks a little bit too compressed, so we'll probably just down these a little bit. 3, 3, and remember these are going to be editable parameters later on, so we will actually edit these through the material instance. So we don't need to get this perfect just yet. I just want to make it look kind of good. Okay, so I think that's good for now. Now that we've got the tiling happening in here, you'll notice around the edges here, it's like really harsh. The water just hits the edge, and the UVs just hit the edge as well with the waves, and the waves are just like as if they were just an open ocean. So to try and hide this a bit, what we're going to do is use something called a depth fade, which basically says if this edge is near another edge, it's basically going to be invisible, and if it's not, based on whatever depth value we give it, it's going to be like clear, or actually it'll probably be the other way around. So you'll see what I mean in a sec. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to grab a depth fade, and we'll set the depth at, let's zoom in, maybe 100, okay? Now, we need to combine this depth with this over here, this normal. So, what we need to do is create another normal map, but we're just going to make a flat normal map. So, a flat normal map would mean no waves, okay? Now, to make a flat normal map is actually pretty easy. You go 0.5 by 0.5 by 1. That is a flat normal map, okay? Now, I could go through this whole append, add, multiply, derive again to add these two together, but I think a simple lerp will work in this situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to lerp based on the depth between a completely flat normal map and the waves that we have generated. And we're going to put this over into here, and we'll press save. And let's have a look. So notice here, the waves don't hit the actual shore anymore. They don't just like cut into it anymore. So we've killed the normals basically around the edges there. And we could make this a little bit deeper if we wanted. Maybe 200. Let's have a quick look. And you'll notice also just here, because underneath here we've actually got some land as well. So the waves aren't as strong there. Now that's not really how waves work in real life, but you don't want sharp corners. So I'm actually going to set this back to about 150. And it's all just about playing with values and seeing what works. Okay, so I believe we've pretty much got the normals sorted out now. Let's add a few more variables into the mix. So we're going to add some metallic. Now, you're probably thinking water is not metallic in nature, but water kind of has a metallic shine to it. So we're going to make our own little metallic, and we're going to call this a float. And metallic, and I think 0.2 from memory worked good. Metallic. Okay, good. Slap that into there and go metalness. Save. Let's have a look. So we've got a little bit of a metal effect happening in here. I think that that could work. We'll play with the other variables first, and then we'll see how we like it. Okay, now we're going to add some specular as well. So we're going to go float, specular, and we'll put that in there, and we'll go specular. And for the specular, I'm going to go... And by the way, the specular is like that ball that when you're looking at a ball and you got like the bright white light on one spot, that's a specular, and you can grow and shrink that. That's kind of what we're playing with right now. So I'm going to go 0.5 to make it a fair bit bigger. There we go. So if I come over here, where's the sun at? There it is. It's up there. So you can kind of... Wow, okay, this is really playing up. Let me just close this off. So you'll probably notice that my mouse is doing some weird stuff right now. Okay, I think that's better now, is it? Nope. Every now and then my mouse seems to just get locked in the editor. I'm sure this is some type of bug and we'll figure this all out eventually, but I'm going to try and open up something to get out of that situation. There we go. Okay, so you can kind of see the specular in the middle there. We're going to keep working on this. So we've got the specular happening. Next we're going to work on roughness. So let's go make another one and call this another float roughness. Now water isn't actually like rough, but it kind of, when you got waves, it kind of looks a little bit rough, I guess, in a sense. So I'm going to add like 0.1 to that. Just a little bit. And there we go. Especially with the metalness values, we're starting to get that kind of liquid happening here. And we've got a really bit of a sharp cutoff just there, but I'm sure we can deal with that in a moment, especially when we start playing with the opacity. I don't think that will be an issue. It's probably because the land underneath, by the way, I'm using a really low resolution land, basically. As you can see, you can literally see all the cutouts. Okay, so we've done that. Now, let's play with the opacity. So, opacity. This is where we... What is that? Did I leave a node out there? I have no idea what that was. Okay, let's move all of this down. Give ourselves some room. And we're going to play with opacity now. Okay, so the way we're going to do opacity is the deeper the water is, the harder it's to see. But we're also going to use a is it Fresnel or Fresnel? Fresnel. I always mispronounce it. It's this node here. Fresnel. I always pronounce the S. I shouldn't. Okay, we're going to use this. And if you don't know what a Fresnel does, I will just... I'm going to open up a new material. And we'll just call this temp. Just so I can show you what a Fresnel does. So we'll go Fresnel. And I'll slap this over into the color, save. Notice how it's got like this white glow around the edge. Basically what it does is, based on the direction of the edge when you're looking at it, the closer it is to you, it's basically 0, and the closer it's away, it's 1. Like if it's perpendicular, it's 1. So 1 basically makes it white, 0 makes it black. Now, that is handy for creating outlines, but it's also good with water, because if you're looking down at the water, that means you should be able to see through it. But if you're looking at the water at an angle, it should like not be see-through. So we can use this to our own benefit. So I'm just going to close that off for now. And what that means is we need an opacity value. So we're going to go float opacity. Now I'm going to make my water straight up. Let's just slap this in here as .8 and see how it looks. So the water's a little bit see-through, as you guys can see. But now we're going to use this whole Fresnel thing. So we've got our opacity and we want to multiply that by our Fresnel. Oh, wait, come here. Okay, good. And we're going to slap that straight into there. Now, you can play around with these values. I think I found like 3.5, like a really high value here, like looked pretty good. If I slap this now into here, come on this angle, you're not really going to notice it yet. I might turn down the opacity just for now, just so we can kind of notice it a bit more. So it looks like how it's doing it is kind of in reverse at the moment. So maybe what I need to do is to reverse these two nodes. So I'm going to reverse it and save. And can't really notice it just yet, a little bit at the back, but I think the metalness of the water is making it a bit hard to notice at the moment. Maybe when we bring in the depth. Let's bring in the depth to the water. So we're going to go have a depth fade. And I'm going to make this just 10. And we're just basically going to combine these two values. So the deeper it gets, the less transparency it should have. Okay, and save. Okay, so here we're seeing that the edge of the water is pretty clear, but the rest of the water itself is still pretty harsh. So now let's play with the refractions. We'll come back to these settings and we'll just basically play with them all at the end. And that's how you get to something that you think is good in a sense. Okay, so for refraction, I think for refraction, I'm just going to put straight in a float, and you have to be careful with refraction. There's actually a bug in the refraction system. Actually, I'm going to put this really high. If you have a refraction that's really low when looking through something, it creates like this square issue, and I've actually already registered it with the GitHub repository under the issues section, but you'll see. But let's look at this from a plane and play around a little bit. Actually, before we play around with this, let's actually do this the proper way. So we have our My New Water, right click on it and create a material instance and call it My Water Material Instance MI. Apply that to this and let's start playing around with these settings a little bit. So we've got our base color, our metallic, and our opacity. Let's put opacity higher maybe, or let's, oh, okay, roughness, 0.1 maybe. I think that's looking a little bit better. Okay, so I've played around with these values a little bit over on the right-hand side, but still, it's not very clear. Like, you can clearly see that there's a hard cutoff here. So I must have done something wrong with my shader. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the opacity. The opacity is obviously that thing that makes it invisible. And zoom in, and oh, I think I can see what the issue is right there. The base reflect fraction was really high. Let's turn that down a bit. And that's looking a little bit better. Let's go 3.5. Okay, let's go maybe at, oh, let's go 85. It's probably a little bit too dark. Okay, so now we're starting to get better. We can keep upping this, so I'm going to put it at maybe 1.35 maybe. Let's try that. Okay, I think that's starting to get a bit better. Save that, close, save this. So here you can see we've started to get that whole water effect. And if I grab my original one, which was this, I think the main difference is that this one here has a lot more movement and it's more bluish. Yeah, this one's got less movement. Oh, sorry, this one's more green and more movement. So this one's less movement. Okay, so let's play with that a little bit. We've got our speed values down here, and 0.9 and 0.4, let's up this to like 0.7, and over here we're going to go 8 and 11. Oh wait, that's not 11, that's like, there. Save. Okay, yep, the waves are starting to move a little bit more. So you can see once you've got the basics of building these things down pat, it's basically you do a little thing, you test it, see how it works, play with the values, and then you just keep repeating that process over and over. But there is a few simple things you need to keep in mind, and that's basically how to mix colors or mix things. You use like multiplies, you use depth fades to fade things out, camera fades, and then you've got those little tricks like mixing two normal maps, which I've listed down the bottom here. It's pretty much just all about that, and then obviously tiling textures, the normal maps at different sizes so that they overlap but don't create a tiling effect necessarily, because you're trying to avoid that. And once you've got those fundamentals down, it's pretty much just play around until you find something you like. And that's pretty much how I've got to the stage where I am with this water shader. It's not the best shader in the world, but it's a start. Anyway, if you guys have liked this video and you want more shader videos along with my programming ones, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next video.